Good to have you with us and welcome to ARIRANG News live from our studio in Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. We begin with the latest on the search for the missing AirAsia plane that was carrying 162 people. Possible debris has been spotted in the search area and teams are racing to the location. For more, here's Connie Kim.
Indonesian officials have spotted possible debris from the AirAsia plane that went missing on Sunday. The investigation team said it had detected brown square objects and silver triangular objects in the search area in the Java Sea. The Transport Ministry has yet to confirm whether the objects came from the plane. Planes and boats have been dispatched to scene to get a closer look. Indonesian officials had previously said that flight QZ8501 is likely at the bottom of the sea. There have also been reports of smoke on an island within the search area. Indonesian officials say they're investigating whether it could be related to the missing jetliner. And to help with search efforts, countries like the U.S., Malaysia, Singapore, and Korea have offered their help. The missing jet is the third plane from a Malaysia-based airline to have been involved in an air accident or mystery this year alone. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared in March in what has become one of the world's biggest unsolved mysteries in recent years. The plane that was carrying nearly 240 people was flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing when it disappeared without a trace. Not a single piece of debris has been found till this day. In July, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 that was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was shot down over Ukraine by what many believe to be a missile fired by pro-Russian rebels. Russia denied any involvement and blamed Ukraine. The 298 people on board all perished. And up until this past weekend, AirAsia had a very impressive safety record and had never lost a plane. Hope has receded that any survivors will be found, but the search goes on. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
The rescue of passengers from a burning ferry in the Adriatic Sea is now over. The Italian Coast Guard says 10 people died while some 430 people were brought to safety. But with that number falling short of the original list of 478 names, there are fears that many more could be missing. Officials say they are still in the process of verifying the exact number, adding that boats and helicopters will remain in the area to continue searching for possible victims. The investigation into the exact cause is still underway. The public prosecutor in Italy has requested the seizure of the ship. And staying in Europe, a healthcare worker who recently returned home to Scotland from West Africa has been diagnosed with the Ebola virus. This is the first known case of the disease in the UK in the current outbreak. Local authorities say the woman, who hasn't been identified, has been put in isolation and is being treated at a hospital in Glasgow. The patient reportedly arrived from Sierra Leone Sunday night after working at an Ebola treatment center. She was admitted to the hospital early Monday after reporting herself as having a fever. People who may have come in contact with the victim are being monitored as well. Now, following South Korea's proposal of talks to North Korea on Monday, some experts said this will serve as a turning point for inter-Korean relations, while others said it was a mere repetition of the past. Our Hwang Sung-hee had a chance to talk to an expert from the latter group. Take a look.
Will South Korea's surprise proposal for talks give fresh momentum to inter-Korean ties? Professor David Kang at the University of Southern California sees it as a routine exchange of dialogue offers.
My sense is that both South and North Korea are looking for ways that they can improve ties without having to give up too much. And that's the problem, is that both sides are willing to make proposals. But I don't actually see a whole lot of new ideas on the table at this point.
He says as much as the two Koreas may want better ties, neither is willing to risk too much. That's why Pyongyang could consider Seoul's idea of more cultural exchanges in time for next year, which marks the 70th year the peninsula has been divided.
I think there's a lot more possibility for joint cultural events, the Asian Games, a soccer match, events like that. Those are relatively apolitical, and they're relatively easy to do, and they don't involve major policy changes.
Professor Kang sees South Korean Unification Minister Lee Gil-jae's offer as a carefully calculated move ahead of Kim Jong-un's New Year's Day speech, in which he is expected to express his willingness to improve inter-Korean ties.
You know, I think the Minister Yu, has been searching for a way that he could try and actually move policy on North Korea forward. So I think that in this way, this is not too ambitious, but I think it's a very careful attempt by Minister Yu. And to that extent, I guess that North Korea would take it seriously. As I said before, I'm not sure that they will actually accept it.
Nonetheless, the expert does not expect Pyongyang to enter a cycle of provocation anytime soon, saying there's nothing particular on the horizon that will bother the regime that much. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Well, today marks the third anniversary of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un officially taking over control of the regime's military. As the North celebrates the occasion, it's ever more clear that he has a firm grip on power. Lee Ji-yoon has more.
North Korea has one of the world's biggest armies, and Tuesday marks the third anniversary since its leader Kim Jong-un was officially appointed to the position of Supreme Commander of the Korean People's Army. With eyes on how the young leader will continue to craft his leadership in the years to come, Kim has largely cemented his place as a powerful military leader. The North's official Korean Central News Agency reported on Monday that Pyongyang held a national meeting to further pledge their loyalty to Kim. At the meeting, Army General Lee Young-gil praised Kim as a, quote, brilliant commander who's training the army to be politically, ideologically, and morally strong. Earlier this year, Kim reshuffled the cabinet, promoting four-star General Hyun-kyung as the Minister of the Korean People's Army in an attempt to strengthen his grip on the military. Meanwhile, the KCNA reported on Tuesday that the North Korean leader observed female soldiers' military drills along with his sister, Kim Yo-jong. This is the first time that his sister had joined Kim publicly to oversee military exercises. And analysts say this might signal that she is rising in the ranks in support of her brother's reign. Lee Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
The dates for North Korea's 5th annual amateur golf tournament next year are out. The DPRK Amateur Golf Open will be held on September 6th and 7th. The event, sponsored by the UK-based Lupin Travel Agency, invites players from all over the world. They will get a chance to play at North Korea's only open golf course, the Pyongyang Golf Complex. The travel package starts at just over $1,100 per person. North Korea started hosting the golf tournament in 2011 as a means to bring in foreign currency. Recent reports point out that Korea is losing ground to China in major export items like mobile phones, while local manufacturers are already having a hard time competing with those in Japan. The government has laid out plans to tackle the issue, but they've got a long way to go. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Earlier this year, China-based Xiaomi took the crown in its local market as the biggest smartphone supplier, replacing Samsung Electronics. What's more surprising is that China's major smartphone makers have outpaced Samsung and LG in terms of global market share. And experts say manufacturers in Korea are not just facing risks coming from China, but also Japan, which is introducing aggressive marketing strategies thanks to the weak yen. They add that the overall competitiveness of the Korean manufacturing sector is on the brink of a downward spiral in the face of an aging population and low birth rates. But some pundits say Korea should turn the crisis into an opportunity so that the local manufacturing sector can make another big leap forward. Take the United States, for example. The government has developed 45 research centers aimed at bringing innovation into the domestic manufacturing industry. The Korean government also announced they plan to breathe new life into the manufacturing sector in June, calling it the Manufacturing Industry 3.0 Innovation Strategy. But the detailed plans that the government promised to lay out by the end of this year have not come yet, while local companies hesitate to make investments amid a sluggish domestic economy. 황지혜, 아리랑 뉴스.
Korea's current account surplus hit a record high last month, continuing its surplus streak into a 33rd straight month. The Bank of Korea says the surplus reached $11.4 billion in November, surpassing the previous record set in October last year. Both exports and imports dropped from a year earlier, but inbound shipments shrank at a faster rate due to falling oil prices, with imports logging $40 billion and exports slightly over $50 billion. The nation's accumulated current account surplus has totaled almost $82 billion so far this year, nearing its annual forecast of $84 billion. The Korean economy is showing signs of recovery, but picking up a decent head of steam is proving to be quite challenging. Statistics Korea says the country's output across all industries edged up 0.1% in November from October, marking the second straight month of increase. It did slow from a 0.3% monthly increase in October, though. The rise in November was driven by production in the manufacturing and mining sector that saw output rise 1.3% during this period, helped by demand for cars and semiconductors. However, when compared to November last year, the figure was down 0.5%. Now, one of the election pledges made by President Park Geun-hye was to achieve 70% of employment rate, but there are chronic problems the labor market faces. If radical changes are not made soon, the labor minister says Korea is going to face much bigger issues down the road. Here's Connie Lee with more.
The push is on for a complete overhaul of the nation's labor laws. In an interview with Korea's Chosun Daily, Lee Ki-kwon, the minister in charge of employment and labor, said that if Korea does not change its labor market regulations by the middle of next year, we will face serious problems. The minister is speaking against the backdrop of chronic labor problems facing the nation, such as a high youth unemployment rate and a large number of contract or temporary workers. Korea's rigid labor market has long been a major issue. Youth unemployment stands at 8%, much higher than the overall jobless rate. And the number of contract workers is more than 6 million. That's 22% of all workers here in Korea. And compare that with the average number of contract workers in other OECD nations, which stands at less than 12%. To tackle this issue, the government has proposed a set of plans to improve working conditions for temporary workers. This includes making sure contract workers aged 35 or older can work at the same company for up to 4 years instead of the current 2. However, these new proposals are being met with criticism from both labor unions and employers.
If the employees get laid off after 4 years of work, where will they go? It will be harder for them to get a job.
This plan places an even greater burden on companies.
While recognizing the need to find some common ground, the Minister of Employment and Labor called for companies to be more flexible in the face of greater global competition. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
The first time the number of overseas visitors broke the 10 million mark was in 2012. Fast forward 2 years, now we are seeing numbers heading towards 15 million. And experts say the economic effect of that number is equivalent to exporting about 500,000 Hyundai Sonata sedans. For this report, here's Kim Min-ji.
Korea is fast becoming a hot tourist destination. According to the Korea Tourism Organization, the number of foreign visitors to Korea this year sped past a new record high of 14 million this week. That's up more than 16% from a year ago and marks the fastest pace of growth in a decade. After surpassing the 10 million mark in 2012, thanks in part to the popularity of Korean pop culture, the figure has been on a steady rise. As for nationality, Chinese tourists top the list. Boosted by a spike in visitors from the National Day holiday in October, the total number is expected to surpass 6 million by the end of the year. Japan was next on the list, followed by the United States. Korea also attracted more visitors from Hong Kong, Thailand, and Russia this year compared to last year. So just how much tourism revenue does this translate into? The tourism organization says almost $18 billion, which is up more than 20% from last year. The organization now has a goal of attracting 20 million tourists by 2017, and one thing they're working on is to boost services to cater to the growing number of Chinese visitors.
We plan to enhance the standards of Chinese guides to address the rise in Chinese tourists and improve services at travel agencies that deal with Chinese visitors.
The tourism organization also pledged to step up efforts to satisfy tourists on an individual level so that Korea becomes a destination that people want to visit again. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
It's no longer an unusual scene to see twins in Korea. The proportion of twins, triplets, and other multiple births among the total number of childbirths has increased threefold in 20 years. Statistics Korea says the so-called multiple births accounted for 3.3% of babies born last year. In 1993, that figure was at 1.1%. The increase is attributed to more Korean women turning to fertility treatments. Obstetricians say while there is just a 0.1% chance of having a multiple birth by natural pregnancy, the chance rises to 25% for pregnancy through in vitro fertilization.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
Ever since taking office, President Park Geun-hye has made it known to the world that she wants to create a peace park in the demilitarized zone. Here's our Kim Young-gil with the latest on the administration's push for the project.
It has been more than 60 years now since the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, was created in 1953 through an armistice agreement. In the decades since, the 250-kilometer, 4-kilometer wide buffer zone has gone untouched by mankind, making it an area that holds great interest for experts.
The DMZ presents a lot of challenges that mankind does not really know how to solve. It is the one and only place on Earth where we can pour in our thoughts and use our imaginations to benefit humanity.
The South Korean government has proposed conducting joint research of the ecology within the DMZ to turn the DMZ into a world peace park.
We will set up specific plans for the DMZ World Eco Peace Park and carry out joint surveys of the DMZ ecosystem with international organizations and North Korea.
The South Korean government has earmarked nearly $30 million for the Eco Peace Park project and hopes to conduct a series of on-site surveys next year. The government hopes to begin construction on the envisioned peace park before President Park Geun-hye's term ends in early 2017. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
And now here's a question you might want to ask yourself. How many movies do you watch in the theater each year? Well, if you're Korean, the number is probably pretty high because Koreans apparently go to the cinema more than anyone else in the world. Korea's movie theater chain CGV says the average Korean watched 4 movies on the big screen in 2014. The data, based on research from Britain's Screen Digest, has Koreans on top of the global list, followed by people in the US, Australia, France, and the UK, respectively. And for the second year in a row, the number of movie tickets sold in Korea topped 200 million. The Korean film Roaring Currents was the most successful this year at the local box office. Now, apart from the movies, though, we saw the cancellation of many festivals and performances this year in light of the Seoul ferry disaster back in April. But original musicals are reporting steady sales and have been a source of relief for many. Im Yoon-hee reports.
This year saw many empty stages and even more empty seats. Plays, musicals, and shows were canceled out of respect for a country in mourning, and ticket sales were affected. Attendance rates at performances were said to have dropped an estimated 20%.
This year, musicals were affected more by external factors than internal factors. The impact of the Seoul Ferry tragedy shrank the consumption of art and culture, thereby burdening the market for musicals as well.
But even in the thick of some sad times, one sector of the industry seems to still be holding the light. The original Korean musical Frankenstein sold a surprising number of tickets earlier this year.
They take internationally well-known novels and turn them into musicals, which gives them a huge advantage.
Alongside original productions, this year also saw the import of many famous international musicals, licensed to Korean production teams. Musicals such as Kinky Boots and Once were hits with Korean audiences.
The diversity and subject matter of Korean musicals is maturing, and the people behind them are now being recognized internationally.
And on the Korean play production front, domestic companies like the Kim Soo-do Project have avoided being dragged into the slump. However, this holiday season, there was a fallout between many of the Korean play associations and the Korea Performing Arts Center. That's now been resolved, but a few blemishes still mark the relationships. Next year has another wave of famous international musical performances in store that will hopefully continue to bring new life to the industry. Im Yoon-hee, ARIRANG News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. We are wrapping up 2014 under dusty conditions. High levels of fine dust continue to stick around, and Seoul is seeing 99 micrograms per cubic meter of fine dust, which is about twice the normal levels, and it looks like this will gradually clear out by later tonight. Along with the fine dust, fog and misty conditions is limiting visibility on the roads to about 5 kilometers. And other than that, we are seeing mild winter conditions, slightly warmer than yesterday, but this mild winter conditions won't last long because snow or showers are set to begin on the west coast early tomorrow morning, which will spread to other parts of the country, and heavy snow is expected in the central regions. Tomorrow's snow or showers will be accompanied by strong cold winds, which should lead to a dip in numbers, and we will be greeted by a freezing New Year's Day. On to today's ratings. Seoul peaks at 6, Daegu's 10, Gwangju and Busan reach the low teens. On to other regions. Jeju jumps to 14, Dokdo hits 8, Mount Kumgang dips to -4. Those are the updates I have for you now, and here's a look at the international weather. Now we are just getting reports in that the objects found in the search area for the missing AirAsia plane is indeed from AirAsia, and that's from Indonesian airline officials. We will have more available at 6 p.m. Korea time. That's our next newscast. Thank you for watching. That was our 4 p.m. newscast. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung.